20 years ago, the Indian writer and activist Arundhati Roy proclaimed, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." Roy offered those words as the U.S. hurtled towards its disastrous invasion of Iraq. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. The words came scant weeks before the U.S. military and its allies embarked on a war of choice that would result in the destabilization of an entire region, the deaths of more than 1 million people, and the poisoning of waters that have blessed humankind since the beginning of agriculture, cities, and what we call civilization. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept. The words of the psalmist could have been written yesterday. The Euphrates and the Tigris, the rivers of Babylon are running dry. Filled with silt, the fish are gone. The ground turns to dust. Orchards crumble. Fields become desert. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept. Houston is unbearably hot. Trapped under a heat dome, it's dangerous to spend too much time outside. Fires range through the forests of Canada, filling northern skies with ash. A tropical storm crashed into Southern California. Greece burned. Maui burned. The rivers of Babylon run dry. And so it goes, the chapters of the unfolding story of our climate catastrophe, each summer hotter than the last. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing, said Roy. It's hard to hear her breathe in the sweltering heat. It was 109 on Thursday. It might be hotter today. Yesterday, I went to my garden. In the swelter, it's been reduced to little more than brown stalks and a few hardy okra. No flowers, the tomatoes all dead, the herbs struggling, all around the grass is little more than straw. This year, for our Ingathering, we asked you to reflect upon how water calls you into a relationship of respect with our planet and its waterways. Respect is an acknowledgement of a relationship. In a respectful relationship, we recognize that there are boundaries, limits that must be maintained if the relationship is to stay healthy. In such a relationship, we also understand that we have obligations to each other. As humans warm the planet, it is impossible to pretend that we as a species are respecting either our planet or our waterways. We refuse to recognize the limits of our earthly home, falling short of the goal of using less fossil fuels. Much of the political class, many of the captains of industry seem unconcerned with the duty we have to maintain a livable planet for future generations. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. The challenge of the Unitarian Universalist tradition is that we're called to recognize the world as it is, and at the same time offer hope in the hard times. We speak of this twinned movement as combining the is with the ought. The world is this way. Humans as a species are failing to respect the very grounds upon which we walk. Life ought to be that way. As a species, we should respect this, the only home we know, for there is nowhere else but here. Is, ought. This gives purpose to our religious communion. We can name the is, and within the bounds of our fellowship, do our best to live out the ought. Our human species is not living in a respectful relationship with the blessed planet of our being. Together we can encourage each other to do what must be done in our own lives, in our institutions, in our society to change that. The earth is not dying, it is being killed, and those who are killing it have names and addresses, folk singer and Unitarian Universalist Utah Phillips used to say. We, especially here in Houston, can name some of the corporate powers that have been responsible for misleading the public about the climate catastrophe. The ought. We can remind each other that there is another way, a way in which we strive to have a respectful relationship with our planet and its waterways. We can softly, lovingly speak to each other of the small choices that we can each make together to make a difference. Eat a more plant-based diet, use public transit, buy some clothes secondhand, switch to green energy providers, turn your lawn into a haven for local flora and fauna, local plants and animals. There are many actions we can take as individuals to lessen our carbon footprint. We can also take together actions to lessen the environmental impact of our institutions. Just this past week, I got to see the permits for the solar panels that are going to be installed on our campus this autumn. The window in the back of the sanctuary is about to be replaced with a new energy-efficient one. All of the air conditioning units have been updated so that they use significantly less electricity. We're lowering our carbon footprint as a religious community. The president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Bentoncourt, is calling on us at the same time to do something as a society and contact our elected officials, local, statewide, national, and ask them to declare a climate emergency. She's encouraging us to remember that together we have the power to move from is to ought. The world is this way. We're not living in a respectful relationship with the planet. The world ought to be that way. There is a narrow path, a new way from is to ought. We can collectively, as a society, reduce the amount of carbon we use and lessen the oncoming disaster. It's good to remember this today, on this weekend that marks the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. It was during that march that Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Let us not wallow in the valley of despair." And inspired by the fierce urgency of now, he spoke of his dream. It can sometimes be hard to recall, easy to dismiss the dreams of people like Martin King and Ella Baker, John Lewis, Rosa Parks, and Fanning Lou Hamer during the difficulties of this hour. But their dream, their generation accomplished much, even if there is always more work to be done. The promised land is always in the distance. It's never quite yet here. There's always something we must be striving towards. But across the march of history, it seems like we're slowly taking steps. And even if that's not true, even if progress is but an illusion, there's still wisdom to be found in Samuel Beckett's words, "I can't go on. I'll go on." Now, this is an intergenerational service, and I recognize that I've mostly been preaching to the adults. I suspect that the kids and some of the youth are not paying all that much attention to what I'm saying, that I'm sort of like that Charlie Brown figure, you know, the one in the cartoons who Charlie and his friends experience as saying, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." So let me try speaking to the young folks for just a moment about our religious community. I know that many of you who are under the age of 18 are here for that old-fashioned reason. Your parents made you come this morning. I guess that was more of a laugh line in my head, but but there's a good reason that they made you come. The world can be tough, and it can be hard, and it's important to have a community in your life where people love you for who you are. When I was a kid, I was a little bit strange on my elementary school playground, a little bit awkward, not always interested in the same things that the other kids enjoyed. Sometimes I got bullied, but I loved to spend Sunday mornings with my home congregation, the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Greater Lansing, because in that community, everyone did the best they could to let all the kids know that we were accepted as we are. A little bit nerdy as I was, this meant a great deal. It did not matter to them, to my congregation, how I was at school. They told me that they loved me and accepted me for who I was. And I want the kids here to know that I, the adults, the staff, Reverend Scott, Carol, all of us want you to feel loved and accepted too. Wah, wah, wah. Wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. I hope that those of you who are young at heart will hear, next time that you hear that from the pulpit, know that we're doing our best to provide you with a loving community, to bring about the world that we dream of in these sanctuary walls so that you'll feel accepted and can flourish into your best self. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. The is of the climate crisis, the ought of another way. May we remember each and every Sunday, each time we gather, that we are called as a community to point to another way, and that through our collective actions, bring a little of that way into being. We can lessen our carbon footprint as an institution. We can offer a loving place in the face of the politics of cruelty for all who might need one. We can show each other a little bit of what it means to live into a more beautiful world. But it might be so. I invite the congregation to say, Amen.